Alison, I would like you to take over now and start the webinar by introducing the attendees.
Thank you. Good afternoon and welcome. Thank you for your time and for joining us this afternoon for the Zensar Micro Focus Elevate Application Performance to Tackle Unprecedented Workloads. We trust that you'll enjoy the webinar and find it useful. We'll also be taking questions at the end of the webinar. So yeah, please store those and have them ready for us. I would like to introduce you and also thank our presenters, which includes Ross, Krishna, Jacques, and Shikhar. Ross, Krishna, and Shikhar are from Zensar, and Jacques joining us from Micro Focus. And I'd like to hand over to Ross as he picks up the first part of this webinar. Thank you very much for your time again, and please enjoy.
Alison, and welcome all attendees, and thanks for your time today. It's a pleasure to present our webinar focusing around how do we elevate our application performance to tackle unprecedented workloads. Just moving quickly onto the agenda. There's a couple of concepts that we're going to have a look at today and how it affects our new order, both pre-existing and post-COVID. Firstly, it's the new world, trend insights, and how adoption is critical for business. Performance is now being looked at as the key measurable from business and specifically from consumers. Scaling industry challenges and rising consumer expectations, they certainly are driving business in South Africa today. But how can we leverage and ensure your performance is met? And continuous performance engineering. For some it's an end state. For some it's a work in progress. But is this now a new baseline? And lastly, how can we as Zensar and Micro Focus help you to achieve this? So if you pass to the next slide, please. What we've had a look at is the African and South African trends and impacts on the industry. And we look at retail, we look at high tech, we look at banking, we look at insurance, and we look at manufacturing. There are some overlays, but more importantly, we've broken down into actual individual domiciles for you. So in retail, building a robust and scalable online key is a key requirement for them. And we've seen the rampant build up over the past few months of online activity. Manage the demand fluctuation by harnessing advanced predictive analytics to ensure customer behavior is driven and understood, more importantly, so business can align. Rebuild customer loyalty and design new engagement models. From the high-tech industry, hardware, mobility devices will have a surge in demand. Sorry, can you just go back? Thank you. Will increase the demand for supporting infrastructure. Security and software is a paradigm and a conversation that every organization has either been having or is implementing or will implement. Their platforms will have an increase in demand. Technology will drive the digital future and connect everything from an augmented and virtual reality perspective. In banking, core to their focus is modernizing application portfolios, migrating resilient and secure workloads to hyperscaler providing cloud technology, building self-service capabilities. Analytics are being embedded into core infrastructure systems just to drive secure branch operations and support for changing volumes that ensure compliance, which is a key factor, and more importantly, business continuity. Driving a digitalization of processes into automated and intelligent workflows. Insurance has had a rapid ramp up in the past 6 to 8 months. Digital applications are now being seen as the enablers for new business and sales alignment. Enhancing the framework with automation to empower carriers with lower total cost of ownership is a key area. Touchless claims, digital payments, and invoices servicing through smart system processes are a key. Manufacturing, ramping up physical infrastructure. So many operators will opt for a virtualized to reduce their OPEX and their CAPEX. Digital channels and commerce platforms to sell the services through IoT and digital platforms is a key play. Control tower view of data insights across the whole manufacturing operation will become a standard component. What we're seeing in some of the industry challenges is disruptions to IT. Finances are being disrupted, budgets are being realigned, security and connectivity are now paramount to all industries. You go to the next slide, please. What we've had a look at And what we try to pick up is some of the seismetics and some of the demographics from last year, where we looked at what is the concurrent usage based with the annual either peaks and troughs in industry. So on return from January holidays, where the commercial sector typically would ramp up, would then have a lag of about 1.5 to 2 months when the taxation and FSI peak would hit. And then retail, interestingly enough, would start gearing up for August. The gear up is primarily due to the influx over the November-December period. And bear in mind, we always have a Cyber Monday before Black Friday to ensure the resiliency and security of the systems are up to par and will meet customer and business expectations. Christmas, obviously, with everyone communicating with each other, and New Year's Eve. And that's the kind of the composite of what we looked at from last year and the year before. However, if you look at the next slide and you map over what the current issues that we've faced with COVID are, is we see the baseline firstly has increased exponentially. And that's the concurrent user traffic load that's transgressing our networks and our infrastructure systems on a daily basis. On the build up to March of this year with the initial COVID impact, we see a linear progression with the amount of concurrent users. We call this the next stage of the plateau period, where business and both telecommunications have had an area to stabilize both consumer demand and infrastructure outlay. However, as we start peaking into August, work from home and compliance are starting to scale. That is purely due to the uptake of online activities. Students, employees, every factor of person who is now capable will be working from home, and their demand is increasing. From a business reaction perspective, going on to the customer-facing applications increase, we see that being particularly used in medical, retail, telcos, banking, specifically financial and insurance industries for touchless claims, and for interconnectivity and transfers. However, towards the late period of the year, we're going to see all the cybersecurity related questions, implementations, progressions starting to come to maturity and starting to unfold. There'll be a lot of development in securing the SOCs, the services, and cybersecurity as an industry is poised to accelerate. Towards the end of the year, the December period, with the POPI Acts and the new compliance for EU GDPR coming into effect earlier this year, most businesses will have some form of business compliance and validation that would like to start interrogating business on. And this is a key point in one of the presentations we're going to discuss about later, is that compliance and security are embedded in the platform. So that ends my quick summation of the markets and the introductions. I'd like to now hand over to Krishna to take it forward for the team.
Sure, thanks, Ross. Hi, everyone. This is Krishna. Can you just move to the next slide, please? So Ross has actually given us a very clear view on the industries, what is the impact on each of the industry, and how the industries are adjusting themselves to make sure that their business is back, and their technology upgrades to ensure that they can take the new traffic, all the increase in the traffic, right? So, and we have also seen the pre-COVID world where we had very clear indication of what is the normal average across the year of the online transactions, or it could be the online traffic, and what are those periods or the seasons where we see the peaks and valleys. And then we have also seen that in the post-COVID world, or a current COVID and the post-COVID, how everything has changed. Then the bar has been raised from the old average to a new normal, right? And on top of that, compounding to that, we have the increase in the user traffic of the seasons again. So it's a compounding effect. Now that is the effect on the applications or the ecosystem. But if we want to really look at or understand the transaction, so every one of us in some shape or other would be doing transactions in our lives as well, right? So there is a recent study that has been done where on an average, a single transaction uses 82 different types of technologies, right? Right from the time you from the surface that you have touched. It is mobile, it could be mobile, or it could be your PC, or it could be Alexa. So from the moment the initial transaction gets initiated until you get the response back, there are at least 80 to 90 different types of technologies through which your transaction would traverse to get you the right response. So that what it means is that uh, when we talk specifically about the performance, the issue of the performance, if you're seeing a lag, it could mean that any of these 80 or 90 components is causing the trouble, which leaves a very big wide space to, it's like a searching the haystack, a needle in a haystack, right? So we need to really focus on the performance testing and engineering at each of the layers to ensure that the performance is as expected, right? On the bottom, if you see, right from 2008 to until 2015 until last year, there was a linear increase or progression on the online activity. So it was, we were able to predict that. And suddenly, there was an explosion, right? So if you look at the brick and mortar stores, people have stopped going there, or maybe slowly, it got resumed. But most of the, stores for some of the customers, they have closed them, right? Which means that those customers have moved on to online, which is a compounding effect. And it is not just moving online, but it is also about what are the different channels through which the end customers communicate to the applications, right? So those also have to be handled at the same time. So we cannot look at the systems in isolation for performance. We have to look at the entire equation or the ecosystem, right? From the end user, how he or she is connecting, or it could be a B2B transaction or B2C transaction, right? We have to take into account all the considerations and then go ahead for the performance engineering, how well we build the system, right? Next slide, please. So if we look at from a 30,000 foot, if you want to look at the performance heat map or the ecosystem, you have users who are working on their PCs or laptops or mobile phones. They're either connected through Wi-Fi or their mobile network provider. And then when the request goes into the internet to get the response, then the CDN, content delivery networks, also come into picture. Then the request lands up into the application data center. Some of the content is served from the origin data center, which is the applications, and some of the content, static content mostly, is delivered through the local installation of the CDN, like Akamai, etc. Right? And then there are several variants, as I was saying, the speed of the experience of the user who is using mobile phone versus the laptop user who is on a wired network onto the router will definitely vary, right? But end of the day, we have to ensure that be it any user, be it on any device, they have to get the right performance, right? So for that, we need to do very thorough performance testing across the different channels of communication. So we can call it as omni-channel as well. So we want to ensure that all the interfaces, from all the interfaces, we are trying to put on the load on the system, just like a real user load. And what we do usually for the holiday period or the seasons where we see a lot of peaks, we go up to at least 5x to 10x of the peak loads to ensure that the systems don't crash during that period, because that will be the peak of the business, right? So when we are considering the performance engineering, we want to evaluate each and every component through which the transaction is traversing. Okay? So that is where we bring in the tools, and Micro Focus LoadRunner is a very powerful tool, as you all know, which can play a very significant role in the overall performance testing. And because of its integration with CI/CD and also APM tools, application performance management tools, it would be a perfect combination for us to thoroughly do the performance testing and engineering and get the results back. Okay. So with that, I would hand this over to Jacques to speak about how we do the performance testing and engineering and what are those nuances that we have to consider. Handing over to you, Jacques.
Thank you very much, Krishna. Right, good afternoon. Let me start with a phrase or a statement. Although we're all unique, a lot of us have similar problems when it comes to performance validation and so on and so forth. We all know, and a lot of my customers online today, they know that it's not easy just to plonk an application into production and everything works, right? There's a lot of planning and a lot of design and a lot of analysis that goes into that. So in today's world, we're very consumer focused and very business centric. And we should do the same when it comes to performance validation. And performance engineering gives us this continuous mechanism to go forward and making sure that our applications are working and ultimately, going live or going into the live environment properly. Just hold a second. Thank you. Sorry, just go to the previous slide. I'm sorry. My dog went a bit berserk next to me. Right. So let me just continue where I left off. Many years ago, well, not so many years ago, what we usually did when it comes to performance validation was to make sure we do some planning, design. We set up a scenario with software to actually put load on the system. We execute against that scenario, typically a load scenario to start off with. And then we take the raw data and we analyze, and then we give out a report. And based on that report, we make a go, no-go decision to go live with the application. And it's live, and sometimes it works and sometimes we have some major issues. And that's just because of a lack of, or not a lack of planning, but really understanding of what the application should do and how it should be working in the end. So what we do today with the performance engineering is we have a more analysis-driven approach where we actually take monitoring and analytical data from the live environment, and we make use of that based on transactions, based on users, based on hits per second, whatever the case might be. And we take all that information and we understand what the workloads are. We profile that and we make sure that when we then plan the performance test as such, we understand exactly what it is that we need to test for in that particular scenario. The other important thing today is not to wait for the application to be ready right at the end of the software development lifecycle, but rather make use of service virtualization and network virtualization types software so that we can actually be on a continuous path, meaning if we have third-party services mimicked as such, then we are able to continuously test without worrying about any third parties that can't work for us at that point in time. And when it comes down to the network virtualization side, it's important that we understand what the network is doing from a mobility point of view, from a normal LAN WAN point of view, and those tool sets and features can actually assist us in getting the testing done in a continuous manner, and obviously make sure that we can go live on time and hopefully within budget if all goes well. Righto, next slide, thank you. Right, so let's just talk about the progression of performance engineering. You heard me talking about load testing. If I say in the old days, I mean only a few years ago, and even today, a lot of people are still just doing, your basic load testing, making sure there's some SLAs being set, and you're testing the upper limits. But that's obviously not good enough in today's world with all the pressures that's on the teams today. Later on, people were doing load, and then they said, okay, well, let's do some stress testing. Let's hit you know, a lot of users with a lot of data. Let's understand where the knee is for this application, where it starts to really go bad in terms of performance, and where it fails. And if it doesn't fail, how long does it actually take to recover from that? And that's really on your stress testing side. Then later on, you know, people had a great idea, and they said, why don't we do some performance tuning? Why don't we test in production, and then we tune the system while we're running? However that may seem, that sounds like a great idea. Not always the best idea, but it can be done if you're very careful and you plan it pretty well. And really that's to pinpoint the root cause in your production environment. Yeah, and for some customers it works, and for others it really doesn't, because there's a lot of audit problems and so on afterwards. But yeah, those are the things, and that's the way that we progress. Then, not so far in the past, you know, the virtualization came about. We could actually take some of our virtualization technologies like service virtualization and make sure that we are enabling ourselves to continuously test all the time. It's not just a once-off. We make sure we can, you know, monitor and make sure we understand how the networks are being affected by this new application, etc., etc. And then came, or now we are in the performance engineering age. It's very important to understand that performance engineering is not performance testing per se, although performance testing falls under that. It's really a proactive and an end-to-end way to measure your continuous performance and making sure that you can also monitor everything while you're doing it. There's no point in running a test without monitoring the systems. How would you identify the bottlenecks? So this is very key and important for us going forward. A lot of times I go to customers as an example, and they're not doing the monitoring, they're only writing a script and they're hitting the system. Now, although that's great, you know, and all, but monitoring is really, really required. In today's world, with our LoadRunner technologies, we integrate with all of the big players in terms of your application performance management tools. We've got some of our own, and we integrate with the third parties, and we make sure that we can take that raw data and really analyze that as part of the test that we did. Right, more people within performance engineering is actually part of the testing. It's not just the performance test engineer, but your business analysts get involved, your developers, your dev testers, and so on. And it gives them focus in delivering what they need to deliver in the end of the day. With performance engineering, like I said, we always also have all these integrations with different tools. Think of a developer. You know, we've been talking about this quite a lot, is where we say, why aren't developers actually doing not only functional unit testing, but also performance unit testing? So what that means in essence is you're giving a customer a tool like LoadRunner, and they're taking LoadRunner and you're actually doing component tests. So the developer is making use of our tools to do a component test, and that shaves off all the little micro and milliseconds of the components they're busy developing. And the more of them that are doing that, when you're putting everything together in the end, you should have a much better and more quality type of product and application when it comes to you know, when it comes down to the application being deployed in production. So these are just things that we've seen over the last 20 plus years since we've been having these tools available for customers. We've been talking to customers, working with customers, and the likes of Zensar, I mean, our partner, they also really work closely with the customers to try and solve their performance bottlenecks and you know, deploying with confidence in the end. Thank you very much. Now over to the next speaker.
Thanks, Jax. Thanks, Krishna. This is Shikhar. So let me summarize and how we are working together. So this is a combination of the particular slide, the Zensar services that Jax explained till now about the performance engineering. So our portfolio from Zensar along with Micro Focus. So we are working jointly. We are co-investing. Micro Focus and Zensar are co-investing to create this particular portfolio of performance testing to performance engineering more robust, so that we can provide a comprehensive solutions, end-to-end services, not only in terms of performance testing, like we are going for load testing, stress testing, the way Jax was talking about, but we are providing these proactive performance engineering services. We start early so that the defects from our performance sites are being detected early in the life cycle. So just to take an example, and definitely I will come to the services after that, is when we are starting from a requirement phase itself, we are working very closely with the business analyst. We are working very closely with the customer to understand what are those particular requirements. And based on those particular requirements, when we are going into the architecture and design phase, we are identifying these are the architecturally significant use cases. And based on that, we create some kind of performance execution model. And that's where it becomes the base of the performance engineering, that we are creating a workload model. We are creating what would be the user and transaction workload pattern. And based on those particular things, we create a performance execution model along with a prototype to see whether what kind of application server, what kind of database server, and what kind of, say, front-end servers would be needed, on which web servers would be needed to run such kind of workloads. And then we also do some kind of capacity planning, hardware sizing based on those particular area, based on doing some kind of what if scenario. So even before when the code is being written, and sometimes we also provide the insights, which technology would be appropriate if I'm talking from a data architecture or information architecture perspective, which technologies would be appropriate. So we also provide those kind of insights. So, and then once the designs are being developed, we go into unit performance testings. We are doing various kind of testing from, like, say, we are running the transactions in isolation, in parallel, and then we expand the workload. We slowly start introducing those users and workload patterns, and we observe how the system is behaving on those kind of varying workload. And that's where the adventure, like we move towards load testing, stress testing, spike testing based on the workload, the way Ross, Krishna, and Jax were talking about. So talking about this is a proactive going along with beta, waterfall model, agile model, or we are going into DevOps. So based on the realistic milestone, we are doing such kind of services. Moving on to the production side, I think there was some insight which was given by Jax, is like we are doing performance monitoring and performance tuning activity. This is more of a reactive, but we are doing a proactive performance diagnostic, and we also set up some kind of KPIs in which the performance KPIs can be correlated to the business KPIs. That could be revenue, that could be number of orders, that could be how many customers are being serviced, and so on. So based on those particular things, we keep on observing, we keep on understanding how the performance is getting degraded, what is the CPU utilization, disk IO, memory, all such kind of things. We can set the threshold, and based on those revenue KPIs, based on those particular KPI, we keep on correlating. So the idea is our portfolio is covering from proactive up to the reactive, from like when we are even thinking about the requirement management system up to the production rollout. It is end-to-end performance testing and engineering services which we are providing, and we help in transforming the systems whenever we are going for application transformation, be it a re-engineering thing, a transformation of the system. We are creating new designs, new things. We are moving on to onto the cloud. Any such kind of transformation engagement when we are involved, we provide those services. So the services are being bucketed at a very high level into 4 areas: comprehensive solutions in which we can set up the testing COE and cover all services, be it not only the performance aspects, but availability, reliability, scalability, testing kind of areas. We can set up the testing COE who are not only doing the current performance testing activities and load testing activities, but the COE can be set up for the entire enterprise. I talked about the proactive areas. Those particular things are our consulting. So those are driven by our consulting solutions as well. Sometimes customers are also engaging us in doing the just the test strategy, performance It's a start of the performance engineering where we are working on the performance execution model. We are working on hardware sizing, capacity planning, and workload modeling, and doing some kind of what if kind of scenario analysis, whether that particular thing would be scalable or not. Engineering and optimization is pretty much focused towards how we can tune the systems, be it during the development, along with the development, or in the production environment. We keep on monitoring, and definitely we take a lot of help from our colleagues from Micro Focus. A great tool sets are there, and we have innovative solutions, some kind of accelerators which are being created into these particular areas. To monitor, to profile, and how we keep on creating such kind of library or the assets when we are working with a customer. And then we go with those kind of recommendation which we can replicate from the same sector, same domain into the other sectors. Like say, if we have worked in a retail domain or a banking domain, say from the investment banking aspect, so we know what kind of challenges we have seen into those particular areas. So when I'm going to another investment banking solution or say retail banking solution, we know these are the areas generally would be having, these are the transactions which may not be working or their tuning may not be right. So we try to come back to the same suggestions, try to replicate those particular success patterns so that the performance engineering areas can be expertise. So our associates from performance engineering are not only trained on the technology, not only trained on various tools, but they also have a great understanding of the respective domains as well. We are providing these particular services in as a service or shared service model as well, because sometimes customers also observe, and we are aware performance engineering is not a continuous activity. Sometimes you have to go through multiple cycles, but when we are going through those particular cycles, in between sometimes you'll be having the gaps because the teams will be giving the recommendation to the development team or infrastructure team or a database team to improvise the system. And once the improvisation of the system is being done, once again, we are going with a repeat of those particular activity from a testing, performance testing aspect. Or we are going for a, once again, a monitoring a flow we are taking just to observe whether those particular defects are being fixed. So in those particular scenario, there would be a less workload or may not be that kind of workload. So customers request, can we have these things in a shared service model or pay-per-use or on-demand kind of performance engineering and performance testing? So we also provide those kind of services. Quickly, we can scale up onto the resources. We are also getting a lot of support from the Micro Focus. Specifically, one thing which I want to mention here, predominantly we are using Micro Focus tools here. One of the tools which we are using for performance testing is LoadRunner. And while during this particular pandemic situation, we were discussing with our partner Micro Focus what can be done here so that we can engage the customers more. So graciously, these guys have mentioned that LoadRunner for a limited time period and to a great number of virtual users, we can provide free of cost so that the overall engagement cost can be reduced. And LoadRunner tool, the way Krishna was also talking about some time back, is having a great capability from a performance testing. One of the best tools in the performance or load testing area, having a lot of capabilities. It can test across the technologies. It is having a great integration with various APM tools, with various defect management tools, and it's having a great monitoring as well as the reporting and dashboarding capability. So my recommendation here would be please work with us, reach out to us, and we will be more than happy to assist you from consulting up to the execution of our reporting perspective. Please move to the next slide. So with this, some of the contexts are being mentioned here from Zensar side as well as from Micro Focus side. Feel free to reach out to us. The way the next step, what I can envisage here is you can reach out to us in terms of you want to talk about what are the issues. We will be more than happy, be it a Micro Focus team or the Zensar team. We are working as a team here, so we can work with you in understanding your issues. If you want some kind of consulting engagement, we can engage with you in a for a shorter span of time. We can suggest you how to take it forward. We can also involve some of the SMEs where the deep technical understanding or deep technical conversations can be taken forward. And we can also do some of the POCs in line with this particular campaign, which is running from a LoadRunner aspect. We can utilize the LoadRunner tool and we can execute a POC for some of the transactions which are critical for your business. So those kind of aspects can be done and we can engage with you based on the requirement. So feel free to reach out to us. Look forward to hearing from your side. So back to you, Krishna, Ross. Any questions?
Right, we'd like to open the forum for questions now. If, in case you have any questions, you can either use the chat or the Q&A to ask any question you might like. We will start picking up the questions now. The first question that seems to have come in is, what is the cost of inaction due to budget concerns? Can someone from the panelists pick that up? What is the cost of inaction due to budget concerns?
So I'll pick that up, Jacques here. Yeah, that's a difficult question, I suppose. If, you know, in these days in COVID-19, this pandemic has got a serious impact on our organizations to operate, and you know what, they interact differently with their customers. So, you know, the need for performance validation or doing stress testing, however you see that in today's world on your website, not just your websites, but your mobile apps, the ones that the customers consume, is very important. We see in the market, people are talking about companies, you know, not doing any performance validation can lose up to $1.6 trillion. Obviously, all the companies together, by not doing that. So it's important that we do really think of at least trying to do some sort of performance validation before we, you know, take anything into production. No bank, no organization can afford not to do performance validation, because that's going to really, really bend them very, very badly.
Yeah, just to add to what Jax was saying, so there are budgetary constraints, and definitely, you know, in this current situation, there will be budgetary constraints. But like Jax was saying, you know, the damage that not doing the testing, the performance testing or engineering, could be way higher than, you know, what you would be actually investing into doing this kind of testing. Now, from the investment aspect, it's not like in 10 years back, you know, you need to have a tool, you need to have your own infrastructure, and then you need to have a lot of engineering insights, knowledge to actually fix the issues. But now, with the cloudification of the infrastructure and also SaaSification, which is LoadRunner is now available, or was, you know, it's already available on the cloud. So it was erstwhile called as StormRunner Load. Now it is called as LoadRunner Cloud. So LoadRunner Professional is a standalone. LoadRunner Cloud was StormRunner in the past, and we have LoadRunner Enterprise, which is Performance Center. So how this actually addresses the budget is, Micro Focus has different options to buy virtual user days or buy virtual user hours on the StormRunner cloud, so that you are not really investing onto a capex licenses, and you are using by the pay by the drink, right, by the hour. So that will significantly reduce the capital expenditure on the tool licensing part. So like that, even on the services part, from Zensar side, we bring in the best practices so that we do the jump start on day one instead of building the whole entire performance testing strategy right from the scratch. We want to bring in all the best practices so that they become like a jump start, so that we can quickly work with the engineering team, the development team, to ensure that we are not passing on the performance issue to the next level in the SDLC. Sorry. Hope that answers the question.
Sure. Thank you, Krishna. The next question that's coming in, and there's an addendum to it, is there a possibility to service customers via the cloud, or what are the options? And as an addendum, how flexible is the licensing for the cloud solution we use? Can it run on-premise or must it be from the cloud?
Okay, I'll take this one. Yeah, that's a good question. Of course, in today's day and age, customers have different needs. Some of them want to run on-premise for various reasons. Other customers need to run via the cloud, or they want to run via the cloud. So with LoadRunner, we have, we have a few options. Obviously, on-premise type of licenses and on-premise installations for customers that require that. And then we also have the LoadRunner Cloud, also known as a StormRunner Load, if any of you know that. So they've just changed the names a bit, but in the end, yes, an on-premise solution, either with LoadRunner Professional or LoadRunner Enterprise, which is the old performance center, and then also the LoadRunner Cloud. And I mean, the licensing is quite flexible. What has been with LoadRunner for a while, where you could buy a perpetual type license, you could buy a term license for 1 month, 6 months, a year, and it all depends on what you need. And in some cases, people opt to buy virtual user days, where you use a virtual user or a pack of them, and they expire in 24 hours. So it just depends on what the customer's requirements are at that point in time. And we are very happy to help customers with different licensing models and so on and so forth. Thank you.
Sure, Jax, if you allow me, I'll add a couple of points here. So some of the organizations were using JMeter, Apache JMeter, which is a very good open source tool. And they were using their own infrastructure to generate the traffic and drive it onto their systems. And then, when someone builds a very big suite of performance testing scripts, then sometimes it's very hard to migrate to newer tool, right? But LoadRunner does a fantastic job of importing JMeter scripts, whatever are already written, right? And that can be run using LoadRunner. So you don't need to really throw away whatever you have already done using JMeter, but that can be imported onto LoadRunner, and then we can run those tests using LoadRunner. So that is one point I just wanted to add.
Sure. Thanks, Krishna. The next question that's come in is many companies make use of APM monitoring tools. What are the integration capabilities or options we can look forward to with the Micro Focus performance test solution? Would someone like to take that? I'll just reread the question.
Yeah, I'll take it. Thank you. I was just struggling to get my mute button there. Yeah, of course, like I said in my first slide, where we talked about performance engineering and being continuous and so on. But in the end, it's more about being proactive. Okay. And what that means is that we make use of APM solutions to get us the information to run these tests. And then while we're running these tests, we can use those same APM solutions, like like Dynatrace and a New Relic and those kinds of third-party APM tools, and even our Micro Focus diagnostics for Java and .NET, where we can really get down to the bytecode and analyze everything that happens in that system. And again, if you're not monitoring the stuff or monitoring your system while you're doing the test, you're losing out on a lot of good data to really critically get to the point where those bottlenecks are. So all the time, Micro Focus, our development guys and R&D in Israel, they on a continuous basis adding new tools and new integrations so that we can actually bring the customers and new prospects all these nice analysis and monitoring capability via those integrations.
Yeah, sure, Jax. Krishna here again, just to add. So the tools are very sophisticated now, be it APM tools or the load testing tools are so sophisticated at the moment that They have full integration into the APM tools, but the data that is coming out, really, we need to really analyze that data based on our past experience and the way we have dealt with several other projects. So that is where we do have performance engineering experts who can look at the data that is coming out of the correlated data between the virtual user, load generation, response time, and the backend, statistics, all put together. What does it actually convey? What is the message that we want to take forward with the development team, so that they do have some actionable insights? So that is where our performance engineering services come into picture, right? So the tool gives all valid data, lots of good data. At the same time, it is about how we are analyzing the data and implementing that, so that we can remediate all necessary performance issues.
Sure. Thank you, Krishna. The next question that's come in is, are you able to simulate a number of different devices and network conditions? Many companies make use of open source scripting technologies like JMeter and Selenium. Are there ways for you to make use of these assets already in place?
Yes. So LoadRunner supports the network simulation. So there is a network virtualization component within Micro Focus, which will allow us to basically throttle the bandwidth and simulate or emulate a particular group of users who are using 2G network versus 3G network versus Wi-Fi, wired network. And then we can also simulate different profiles like packet loss, uh, uh, moving between the towers, right? Signal loss. So some of these will definitely be a part of the workload profiling what we do for the test, so that we push in the realistic load onto the applications, right? And the second part of this question, I think I've already answered in my previous response, that JMeter, yes, it is a very popular open source load testing tool. And because LoadRunner is a commercial tool, in the past, we did not have any integration. But if somebody wants to move from JMeter onto LoadRunner, because if you look at JMeter, it's a very good open source tool for the web applications, for API, few of the protocols. But if you look at LoadRunner, it has, say 70 plus protocol support. So it can definitely, LoadRunner can import the JMeter scripts and we can run the test. So nothing is, the investments that you have made until this point wouldn't go waste, right? Whatever we build now onwards, we can build using LoadRunner.
Moreover, if I would like, this is Shikhar, I would just like to add there is the differentiation, or I would say where to use what. The idea is, Krishna is mentioning about JMeter. When we are talking about an enterprise application, say, let us take an example of a complex retail banking solution or investment banking solution. There could be a heterogeneous technology stack, and we have to not only simulate the one of the technology, but multiple technologies from where we are getting the load onto the system. And when we are simulating such kind of scenarios, we cannot use multiple tools or multiple systems who are injecting the load simultaneously. We need to control that particular workload. So we need to have a platform or a solution which can cater to these kind of heterogeneous technology. It can integrate with APIs also, microservices, mobile, various different technologies, heterogeneous technology stack. So it is really very important. I'm just talking about the differentiation, where to use which kind of tool and all. So sometimes in those scenarios, JMeter may not be appropriate solutions, and definitely we can look towards these kind of commercial solutions like LoadRunner.
Thank you, Shikhar. I think that's all the time we have for today. I'd like to remind the attendees that you can reach out to us for any more questions or any more information on the mail IDs given on your screen. We will also be recording the webinar and we'll put it up on the Zensar webinar page as well. We thank you all for attending. I'll now like to hand it off to Ross for any closing comments he might have. Ross, over to you.
No, in closing, just thank you for all the participants that attended today's session. I hope that you found it incredibly valuable. Our contact details here are listed below. We would love to hear from you as organizations. And we look forward to having the future conversations with you in our post-pandemic period. I think it's an important period to recover from. And we're here to help and we're here to assist. You know, you've heard from the experts and you've heard from the panelists around some of the unions and partnerships that we have around Zensar and Micro Focus. And we put this together primarily to help the industry and to help the markets. So take use of our services, take use of our models, have a look at the licensing programs that we have. They're all set to maintain, to develop and help you expedite and recover from the period, and also provide power into your systems so you can get the analysis.
Ross, just to reiterate, sorry to cut you off there. Just to reiterate, there is a limited free licenses from Micro Focus on the LoadRunner part, so which you can utilize for some period, and then based on the interest, based on how you look at the results, you can take it forward. So this is only for a limited period. Just to reiterate, I think Shikhar has already covered that part. Sorry, Ross, go ahead.
Not a problem. Very important. I think in closing, just thank you to everyone, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you.